Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on a wonderfully wet July day, which is weird for us here in south central Texas. We don't usually get rain in July, but we've had like a couple days of rain. So it's really nice, and you can see lots of storm clouds around, so plants are happy, orchids are getting free water, food gardens getting water, flowers are getting water. It's great. Anyway, today I want to talk about repotting a Phalaenopsis sumatrana that I got, I don't know, I guess in February. And when I got it, the grower said, hey, I don't grow this species very well. I've got this plant. It's a nice looking plant, but you can just have it for free. I said, okay, great, thank you. And then I got home. The plant itself is great, but the roots, they were okay. They were not great. So it required a little bit of spag and bag. So for the spag and bag, I actually do things a little differently. I don't use a bag. I use a big cup, and the cup is open at the top so there's air circulation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So it's a different system than a lot of other people use, but it works really well for me. I noticed that the roots are looking really good. Lots of growing root tips. So this is a great time to get it into a pot. And I'll show you a little bit of what I did to rehab the roots, as well as what's making me think it's a good time to repot, as well as the repotting itself. So let's get the camera turned around and take a look. All right, so I've got the tripod set up so that we can have a top-down view of what's happening. And I'll start with my spag and bag, which is really not a spag and bag, but it's just this big giant plastic cup with some holes punched into the bottom. And then there's a water well. And then that water well stays wet. But inside the water well are these epiweb. And let me pull this out. Let's take a look at the plant in a second. But you can see some skinny but growing roots, which means it's time to repot. And so what I had is the plant itself inside of here with some sphagnum tucked in, and then I'll just shoot it with water every now and then. Probably not often enough since the leaves are a little skinny. And you can see the sphagnum in here. The sphagnum holds moisture around those few roots that are left that are still good. But then in the bottom, I have the epiweb, or the eco-web. And this is something that most of you probably can't find, but you can put whatever non-organic you can put in those styrofoam peanuts that don't break down in the water, or rocks or whatever, just something to elevate the plants up off the water well. So the water well, of course, creates tons of humidity, but it's open at the top so you don't get the rot issue. So I have found that if I just take a bag, put a plant in it, seal it with some wet sphagnum, and then close it, they get mold, and like a lot of mold. Not the kind of mold that's not so bad for your plant, but like too much. So this I found is pretty effective and holds the humidity in, but still allows enough circulation that the plant doesn't get mold. And I think the sphagnum that I sort of push around the plant and the roots also helps to lock in some of that moisture around the roots. So it's a really cheap, easy, effective, and reusable system. So you take a spag and bag, throw a bunch of sphagnum in a bag. You're probably going to throw everything away afterwards. But with this, it's, I took a little bit of cotton candy that I would never have used again. Would have normally gone to the garbage, and now I'm reusing it over and over and over again for orchid rehabilitation. So that said, let's take a look at this plant. I have not unwrapped this or really seen what's going on a whole lot. I threw this plant in here with these root tips that weren't great, or non-existent I should say, and now I've got a bunch growing in. So this is a great time to repot. Alright, so these roots have soaked for a little while now, and they're much more pliable and easily bended, which is what you want when you're repotting. So for example, this sort of aerial root, I can push down to the pot, as well as these other roots here. And of course this is the pot. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit on the bottom here. And I'm using the same sphagnum that I had in here. You know, it's just been sitting for a month, maybe 2 months. I'm not really doing anything, not getting super wet, not being dry, but so it's fine to use. The roots have grown into this little piece of epiweb, so I'm not going to try and peel it out. I'm just going to leave it. It's not a big deal. And then I'm going to try and push all the roots down into the media while being careful with the root tip. So there's a root tip there that I really want to be careful with. So I have to say that I'm a firm believer in really packing in the sphagnum. But with these tender root tips, I'm not being quite as aggressive as I normally am. I don't want to break any of them off, as you can imagine. First I want to make sure that all the leaves are outside of the pot. And then I pack in more sphagnum below them. And you'll notice that this sphagnum is dry. And that's for a reason. It's a lot easier to pack the sphagnum in when it's dry. And that's it. I want to make sure that the sphagnum is away from the crown. I don't worry about crown rot here in Texas, but I want to make sure that that lack of worry or worry-free Phal growing continues. And so keeping the crown fairly free of sphagnum will help. So this plant is pushed down quite a bit. The sphagnum is mostly here. There's a little bit of some sticking up, but for the most part it's fairly deep down. And that's it. So now I'll water this thoroughly. In fact, I'll just let this sit in this pot and absorb the water. Got to add the tag back in, of course, so that I know what I'm growing. And that's it. Easy peasy. See ya.